Today's social media segment is brought to you by Terrebonne General Health Systems, modern technology, and timeless caring. Rouse's, you're either local or you're not. Buick, the craft of modern luxury. St. Martin and Bork, know your rights.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Weisheit, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it. And it's always good to celebrate important things happening in our community, especially when we have some people who have dedicated their lives to making a difference. Very glad to have with us again, Ms. Aranda Smith. Aranda, thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And Aranda, by definition, is a personal development coach and the Ivy League coach, by definition,
yes.
With a master's in organizational dynamics.
Yes.
And that's the MSOD.
Yes.
Right. And it's important to kind of clarify that because I think very often people don't always understand what the letters behind somebody's name means, or if it just says maybe life coach, what that means. But tell us a little bit about your education, a little bit about your training, and how it's so important that you become the Ivy League coach.
Yeah. So I got my master's degree in organizational dynamics from the University of Pennsylvania.
Right.
So while I was in the master's program, I also got 3 certifications. So one of those certifications was coaching certifications. One was in organization development and change studies and organizational leadership. But then as it relates to the coaching, right? So the coaching, I know right now it's like society is oversaturated with every type of coach you can think of.
Right.
But I went a lot further than what most people do in terms of coaching. So I have right over 300 hours of theory and practice, in coaching. Also, I have well over 800 hours of paid coaching hours as well. So I've done a significant amount of training, as a coach to become the person that I am. I focus on personal development. I use an approach that's called appreciative inquiry, which means focusing on your strengths. So whether it's an organization or a person, we always focus on their strengths. So what I do is always try to identify the good, to make it better, and you become the best at it, whether it's an organization with products and services or it's a person.
Right. And that person in that service, right?
Yes.
Being able to bring out the best in you.
Yeah.
And then being able to bring out the best in your organization. And it takes really taking a step back to go, okay, wait a minute. I didn't realize it, but that is a strength of mine. And sometimes I think people may see, let's say, obsessiveness. They may see that as a negative, but you can kind of help them understand maybe you can use that as a positive.
Yes, right. How you leverage that.
Right.
And I, as a, clinician, I'm sure you're familiar with, what we focus on is what we become.
That's correct.
So we try to initially get people to focus on the things that you can do well. I said, because the things that the challenge areas right now is not helping you to get closer to your goal.
Right.
Right. So let's focus on something that's going to get you a little closer. So those are going to be the things that you're good at. So we try to identify those and also build self-confidence as well.
Yeah. And we talk about speaking things into fruition. Whatever thou speakest, the like shalt thou bear.
Yes.
If we focus and talk about those things that are positive, we become more positive.
Yes.
If we focus and think about those things that are negative, those things tend to embrace us. We tend to envelop ourselves in negative thinking, or in the clinical world, we call it stinking thinking.
Yes,
right?
of course.
It's just one of those things that we do. And so I love the fact that we can clarify that, because a lot of times people, in our world, and I had to do this on Tuesday, very glad to go and speak in front of some students who are trying to consider what they want to do. We even talked about some of the options for development and the difference between coaching and the difference between social services and social work. And there's a lot of differences there that people just need to understand. And so I appreciate you doing that. But not only have you done what you've done with your education, but let's talk about the Ivy League coach, in that she is a leader in our community.
Yeah.
And she makes a difference for other people. And this development of Celebrating Women's History program is one of those things as well.
Yeah, of course. So the Ivy League coach, this is our second annual. So I decided to do that just basically to bring a diverse group of women together. There's a lot of women's programs, seminars of sort, but a lot of times they're geared toward a select group of people. So maybe women that are have completed education or something like that in a specific discipline. So for social workers or something like that.
Right.
But I wanted to have something that was just more of a diverse space of women. So there's all ages, different types of profession. So the goal is there is to inspire people through stories, because stories are very important.
Right. And there's some really inspirational people. We're going to spend some time talking about those. Let's talk about, I know this is the second year. What was it that made you want to do this? What was it that made you want to really, other than inspiration, and that's something that you're very much a part of, what was it that said, hey, Rhonda, you need to do this?
I would have to say, as a community servant, I guess I'm blessed to be in a lot of different spaces, right? In a lot of different rooms. So sometimes I'm in the community and I'm working with community folks. So there's other times where I may be doing some professional development within the organization. So a lot of times those are professionals sitting around the table. But what I learned that in each room that I've been in, there was always some type of impact by stories that were shared, by skill sets that were shared, by backgrounds of those individuals. So I wanted to create something where all of these people can come to the table, because oftentimes we don't get that opportunity. So there's, like I said, a diversity, not only into age, ethnicities, and all. So I wanted to challenge myself to see if I can bring people to the table to share these stories of inspiration that impact other lives.
That's a great idea. I got to tell you, it's exciting to think about. It was one of those things. I was on the radio. My brother called in, and I was talking about learning from our mistakes. Kind of how do we learn from things that maybe were a challenge in our life, and how do we look at that differently? And the only way we can change our past is by how we look upon it differently. This one event in my life may have been considered to be negative. If I look on it differently, it can be seen as a positive. He called in and he made a powerful statement, and I think it leads right into this Women's History program. He said, not only should we learn from our own mistakes, but maybe we can learn from others.
Right.
And I think that's the value of these inspirational stories.
Yeah, exactly. Because you get to is the understanding that you're not the only person that has gone through or going through at the moment. So someone shares that one thing, and that's the hope. That's my hope on that day, that somebody just hears that one thing that they can identify just to move them a little bit further to their goals.
I love it. Rhonda, I appreciate you sticking around. We want you to stick around as well. I want to tell you all about this program, the Women's History Program, when we come right back here on Bayou Time.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Weissite, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. So very glad you're joining us, and also so very glad that Rhonda Smith is still joining us. Welcome back.
Yes.
One of the things that we're talking about is this wonderful event that you've thought up. And so, Aaron, put that up if you don't mind. The in honor of Women's History Month, they're going to be sharing her story, her journey. And it is a program of inspiration brought to you by the Ivy League coach. As you can see there, Aranda, who is doing that, an MSOD, who is so very involved in our community. And there's a lot of things going on around. I'm going to let you tell us about this flyer.
Yeah, so this is our second annual event. So last year, we hosted our first annual Women's History event. We had our guest speaker was executive director of TARC, Mary Lynn Bisley.
Right.
She did an awesome job. It was a phenomenal event.
She's a wonderful person.
She is. She really is. So this year was our second annual, and our keynote speaker is Mia Johnson.
Right.
Mia's an attorney.
Right.
So she grew up here in Houma, but now she's a attorney. She's a staff attorney for the Louisiana House of Representatives, and I've had conversations with her quite a few times, and I was inspired by her, to say the least. So I'm excited to have her on board as our keynote speaker this year.
And it's going to take place at Park Place Venue, 7529 West Park Avenue on March 30th from 11 to 1:30. There's a contact number there if you're interested. It's 985-628-0000. It's $35, and food and drinks are included. And so what a wonderful price for people to come and be really inspired. And I know there's a lot of other things going on that day.
Yes. Yep. So we'll have Mia, and then also our guest speaker, we have Laura Stanley. So Laura, I've been watching over some time. So I really appreciate the work that she does in regards to behavior health and addiction services. Not only does she work in that space, Laura also she'll share, on that day,
her story.
Like she has, some 7 years sobriety, and she's done some phenomenal things with her life.
Yeah.
And I know that now, with opioids and a lot of addictions that we're having right now currently in our local community, I thought she would definitely be an asset to share her story and maybe share some of the services as well that she's connected to help some of the people in the audience. But she's definitely truly phenomenal and inspiration as well.
I love it to have really two different very powerful speakers,
Oh my God.
right?
Yes.
From the area who said, hey, we can do wonderful things.
Yes.
And again, being able to share that through inspirational storytelling.
Yes.
About what they do and who they do. Lots of other things happened in that day. Let's roll right on through, Aaron, with the next one. Let's talk about these ladies.
Yeah, so these two ladies, I'll start with Ms. Green. Ms. Michelle Green has a nonprofit. It's Hands for Christ.
Right.
So that nonprofit, what they do is in the time of a family's bereavement, they volunteer and they'll go out and they'll serve the food for those families. Most of the times, the families provide the food, but there are sometimes as well where they can provide the food as well for these families. So they've been doing that for quite a few years. What I want to say about the Leading the Way awardees, these are just normal, everyday folks. So these are not folks that are working for these large corporations that have foundations. These are smaller nonprofits or individuals from our community just doing some great things. So I want to make sure that they're highlighted.
I like it. And the other one there,
and then
somebody
other one
we're familiar with?
Yes, Miss Connie Berg.
Right.
Folks may be familiar with her. She was also a candidate for Terrebonne Parish President.
Yep.
But Miss Connie Berg is big on beautifying Terrebonne. She does it on her own time and her own dime.
Oh, yeah. And look, nobody cuts more grass than Connie Berg.
Yes,
That's
exactly.
what I figured out.
Yes, she does the work, man.
Yeah. So it's one of those people that say, hey, we need to do some beautification here. Not afraid to get her hands dirty to do it.
Yes. Yep. She gets out and she does it.
Right.
Her time and her dime.
Right.
Yes.
Her time and her dime. I like that. Does it
Yep.
as well. There's another flyer I want to be able to share with you guys. There's some other inspirational people that are going to be there.
So this is something we added this year. So last year we did not have a panel. So I want to get as many stories as I could this year. So Crystal Geiger. Crystal is a Navy veteran. So she's the executive assistant to the chancellor over at Fletcher College.
Fletcher, right.
But she does a lot of great work. But I wanted her to, I'm a military veteran. I spent some time in the Army, also deployed during Desert Storm.
Right.
But oftentimes I get questions from civilian about the military to civilian transition. So I asked her to kind of talk about her story and her transition from military service. She was in the Navy, from military service to a civilian. And she's doing some great things over at Fletcher. Yeah, she actually started a military veteran center over at Fletcher College as well. So
that's very well received too.
Yes, great person.
Tell us about Dr. Green.
So Dr. Green has a doctorate in educational leadership. I mentor a couple young folks. In fact, I was meeting with a young man and a young lady on yesterday, and we're talking about college versus military service and all. So I was just telling him about, in terms of academics, it takes a lot of discipline.
Right.
It doesn't mean that, folks, if you see someone that has attained, college education, that was not without some challenges in there, but it just takes some discipline. So I just wanted her to kind of share her stories, like what was her path to getting to her doctorate. I know there were some challenges, but she completed the process. So that's to inspire folks that you can do it.
Right.
You can do it as well.
If that's what you want, you can overcome those things.
You can do it.
I like it. And Miss Giovanna.
And Miss Giovanna, so Miss Giovanna has been on this path where she's ran 1 mile every day, well over 250 something days now. So that in itself, we're talking about discipline and inspiration, right? And where we're living in an area now where we're high blood pressure, cholesterol, obesity, and those sort of things. So I'd say, oh my God, I just want to hear it. And I haven't asked her about her story yet.
So you need to hear her health story.
I want to hear it.
people to be able to come and do that.
Yeah.
So Aaron, put that flyer up one more time so we can let people know how they can come and hear her story, as well as her story and her journey. Again, it's going to take place at Park Place Venue, March 30th from 11 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. More interested information, go to Rhonda,
Yes.
thanks for joining us today.
Well,
So very glad
thanks
you're
for
here.
having me. Come out and be inspired.
All right, I love it. All right, guys, that'll do it for this particular segment. Don't go anywhere. A whole lot more right here on HTV.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.